Ladies and gentlemen, it's been alive. It's been a while since I've been live, but today's topic is about Kumachi, the man who saved God Valley himself. One man, it was a very great job from Kuma because what he did was it couldn't be done by anyone else besides Kuma, because you need the endurance, the will to outlast most things, But besides that, not even besides, this video is about Kuma to be specific because title is about Kuma and what happened to him in God Valley. So we got to God Valley we didn't come with Kuma to be specific because the first time we knew about God Valley is when what happened, it was Sengoku telling us about God Valley generally, But with that being said, Sengoku didn't tell us everything about God Valley. It was just a quick what do I say? What am I looking? Oh, so Sengoku didn't say much about God Valley to be specific, but yeah, you wouldn't expect anything from Sengoku anymore. Kuma though. So ladies and gentlemen, when we got to God Valley, it was with Sengoku, and then I think it was the flashback. I don't know if it was the Kuma flashback, but we got God Valley through a flashback. Yes, it had to be the Kuma flashback. So with Kuma, to be specific, Kuma was shown to be a very weak person coming into God Valley. Kuma was just a kid, to be specific. Kuma wanted to die. Let me just say that. But with the likes of Ivankov and the likes of Genie, Kuma gained the will, to fight against the current situation, to try to survive, because it was really much surprising to find out that there were people who had hope in that situation. Freddy, what up, already? What a chapter, dog! It was an insane chapter, I have to say. It was a banger chapter, banger, because everything I think was falling into line. Everything was it's coming into everything is falling into pieces. I'm not sure what to say, but it was absolutely immaculate, But when we look at Kuma, Kuma came into God Valley as a weak child. Kuma wasn't that much of a giga child, when he got to God Valley. But when he left God Valley as a legend. It's insane to think that with all the people that were there in God Valley, yet Kuma is the one that came out number one. There were tons and tons of people in God Valley who were stronger than Kuma. They could have, like, even with Kuma, I know there were some certain aspects of moments that were questionable from Kuma himself, but Kuma pulled his own. First he was able to survive, number one, you know, surviving God Valley. I think that's a story that's not being told at all because they can't tell that kind of a story. But I think surviving God Valley was serious and it's a story that needs to be told one day in the One Piece world. Kuma is the MVP of the entire story, no debate. Like, what is it that Kuma cannot save in this situation, Poison? It just goes to show you that this man is really great. Even in a time where Dragon himself was weak, when Dragon was like crying in his knees, like it should have been me who saved all those people, but it wasn't Dragon. It was just Kuma himself. And when Genie was like, at first, when we were told that Kuma saved all these people, I was like, maybe we are guessing this man up, brother. It's now that I understand that God Valley was saved. God Valley didn't get wiped out, no, because God Valley is not an island, but the people that lived in God Valley. I'm not sure if the citizens of God Valley were able to survive, but God Valley survived through Kuma. God Valley was saved, even though we're not sure where all those people were sent, because I'm sure that Kuma sent them to different parts of the world. I had I had a feeling that Big Mom wouldn't die. Oh, I had a feeling that Blackbeard's mom wouldn't die. Yo, Hassan, how are you, boys? Now, Ares made it out alive, but I'm not sure if you noticed what happened in this recent chapter, because Kuma didn't just tap them one time, but it was two times. Kuma teleported Teach and his mother at the very same time. So it was a double touch. There was transportation of two people simultaneously, but we are not sure if they went to the same place. So this might be the terrifying like backstory, or this is how Blackbeard's backstory begins. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, Doc, but it's like Kuma didn't teleport them with one hand, though. It was like first this hand and then the right hand or the left hand was with Teach. So it might be possible that they were sent to different islands, which might start the very, very sad beginning of Teach's backstory. If Teach and Aries were separated in this moment, to be specific, I don't think it would have been easy for Teach to grow up individually, because it would have been hard, very, very hard, But Kuma saved almost everything in God Valley at this point. There is nothing this man hasn't done, But I don't know what people might say, but even in Dressrosa, I'm not sure if you remember Dressrosa. When we were in Dressrosa, the people weren't more concerned about their homes or about their island because the bad cage was about to destroy everything. Let me tell you something. The bad cage was like Doflamingo was done. Doflamingo was done, but the most scary thing was that people were going to lose their lives. Freddy, what if Aries is the reason why Blackbeard turns out the way he is today? I think Aries might have sent to Blackbeard to join Whitebeard crew. If this is the path that Aries took Teach down to, I don't think it's a very bad path. You know, Nothing that Teach will do right now will look bad anymore. Let me tell you something. I was even contemplating the death of Ace and the success of the the mission that Teach had. Which was more important, having the execution, having Ace die, than Teach getting those devil fruits. You know, would you want to have Ace back right now? If I were to ask you, would you like to have Ace back with the current events of Godwin? You know, would you like to have Ace back, or do you prefer Teach having both devil fruits? Because we know he needs them. A South African One Piece streamer, you love to say it. What up? What up? What up? Yeah, it's just South Africa on the chat. It seems today, South Africa rolling the chat. But it's just insane when it comes to One Piece lately, because the lines have been blurred, ladies and gentlemen. There is no longer a good side. There is no longer a bad side. There is no longer a Luffy needs to fight Blackbeard. We've been saying this. Like, I know that people see like Teach as the final villain. Now we don't need Ace back. Exactly. It's hard. It's a very hard decision right now, but Ace needs to rest in peace. Ace needs to rest in peace because it wouldn't have been possible without Ace. All of this we just thank Ace and his ignorance to go after Teach, but it just goes to show that which will had to live on more, because it was two dreams. Even though Ace didn't want to accept it, he wanted to go for the One Piece like his father too. Teach wanted to go for the world like his father. You know, I think people underestimate Teach's strength. I don't think he needs a third devil fruit. His haki and two devil fruits are strong enough. Hey man, I agree. I agree. As things are, because Teach is not weak. Teach was able to scar Shanks without any devil fruits. I'm not sure if it was with devil fruits or what. Yeah, but he had the devil fruits back then. But Teach was able to scar Shanks, and that scar still itches even today. When he thinks of Teach. So we shouldn't underestimate Teach, because we overestimated Rocks because we thought he was ready, but he was not ready. And we were laughing at Teach because he was running away. Teach was running away because he was not ready, and we were mocking him. That's just insane. I did say we are gonna get Blackbeard and Luffy versus Emu, and then we are gonna get Luffy versus Black. I think Luffy versus Blackbeard before, you know, Luffy versus Blackbeard before the what you call the final fight. Because if Loki is getting out of Elbaf, it has to be with Luffy, and Luffy if Loki meets Teach, I just hope that Luffy is there, because I really think that Luffy, it's time. Maybe it's not even time. By now, Luffy knows that maybe the One Piece is not the greatest thing out there. Because as much as Luffy thinks that Roger is a cool pirate, as much as Luffy thinks that who is this Shanks is a great pirate, he had never heard of Rock's Dizzyback before. And I'm telling you, I will be the one to say this, but the information of Rock's Dizzyback getting to Luffy will be a game changer. This is going to change everything and the fight against the world. Because people might look at Nico Robin and be like, Nico Robin is a Straw Hat crew, a Straw Hat member, but Nico Robin is the fight against the world type of character. It doesn't make sense for Robin to go on a jolly trip to find the One Piece. Yes, Robin needs to be there, but Robin is more of a me against the world type of feeling. That's what I'm getting from Nico Robin. So this is going to change a lot of things. Because Scopa Kapan is going to make sure that Luffy understands everything before going to get the One Piece. And Scopa was there in that island, but I'm not sure how much Scopa Kapan knows about God Valley, but it has to be something. It has to be something. But the D clan, ladies and gentlemen, it's even the panel where Ares sees Rock's Dizzyback, and then immediately she can tell that Rock's Dizzyback lost. Oh my god. When Ares said, "So you lost. We are sorry for making you fight this battle now." No, man. I think Imo had personal beef with Davy D. Jones, and we found out Rocks is a descendant of the Davy. So Imo went to extreme lengths to erase Rocks. That's why he isn't as known as Roger. Ah, because I don't understand how the legend, and it's not even for Rocks only. How is the giant King Harold not known like that? Because before you even talk about Rock's Dizzyback, you need to talk about the King Harold. Because people are underestimating yo Poison, how are you? People are underestimating who is this? People are underestimating King Harold and Rocks. But I really, really do believe that Emu made sure that Rocks and Joy Boy are erased from the history. That is why Godville is no longer drawn in maps. Yeah, but yeah, dog, I'm a professional. Yeah, I'm a professional. Yeah, so at this rate, this is where it all begins. Because I remember that Oratile once put on a defense for Roger. He was like, you know what, dog, you're judging Roger way too much. What if this is where it all begins? And now I agree. Because Roger seems to have wanted to turn this world upside down, but at the beginning of his journey, was he sure what he was setting sail to do? Did he already have dreams to go against the world government or something? Did he want to do something spectacular or what? I didn't expect some personality from him with this chapter. Dog, like we've seen him look surprised. Him was like for a moment. We've seen Emu with clear eyes. We've seen Emu angry. We've seen more of Emu, and there's two chapters than ever, dog. In this point, I'm sure Emu is a man. Emu is a guy. Like there is no way Emu is a girl. There's no way Emu is a woman at this point. We have to declare it. Emu is a he. You know. Did you see Blue Lock chapter 323? Yes, I did, but I haven't read the English translation. But I'm going to do it soon. But I have to say, Emu is a he. From those reactions, because if Emu was a hair, maybe when they mentioned Joy Boy or when they mentioned David D. Jones, you would have expected them to blush a bit. They, Emu was denouncing Davy Jones was funny as hell. Or the way Emo was denounced. Dog, it was like, nope, not him, never. It was like, no ways. No, no. We all know it happened, but no. It's still a no. It's like, I know this is the truth, but in my eyes, dog, like, I am moo right now. You know? It was like, no, there is no way that that's true. Even though it's true, but it might not be true. That is Imu's side of the argument that I'm right. Because I'm Mu, I'm right. That is Imu's argument. Nah. Ngeke. Imu in Zulu. Imu in Zulu. Imu. What is Imu in Zulu? Is it Imu? Imu Muza. Imu Muza. Yeah? So I have to say, like, it was a very interesting chapter. But now I understand the pain behind the Rocks parents. You know, people might think that the Rocks pirates are a very jolly crew, but afterwards, I'm not sure how they were able to live with the fact that they couldn't protect their own captain. At the end of the day, these guys genuinely cared about Rocks. And I'm really happy to say it because we thought that this was a crew that wouldn't protect each other, but it doesn't seem like that. But what's going to happen in the next few chapters, we are not sure. But what happened between Kaido and Rocks? Because you could tell that Kaido was genuinely confused as to, hey, yo, Rocks, dog, like, you are strong, bro. Like, Rocks, you are strong. This can happen to you. Kaido was genuinely confused as to how is something like this happening to you, big bro. You know, and at that moment, my feelings just rose. At that point, I just understood that, man, this crew was totally misunderstood. Because at the end of the day, I feel like the Blackbeard pirates are going to end up the same way. Because even though we feel like these guys will betray each other, what if it's just personalities at the end of the day? You know, sometimes you will get used to each other, you know. But I feel like they will be the heroes that won't be mentioned in the upcoming generations. I know it's hard to think of Shiryu as a hero, but Shiryu might end up as a hero, guys. Shiryu might end up as a legend, you know. Even Katarina Devon, all those are criminals. But and it's crazy to find out that Teach put a job like this in the hands of criminals. Why? It doesn't really make sense as to why would Teach get criminals to join up his crew? You know, like it is just straight out outlaws from Teach, which shows that he is different from Rox Dizzyback. Maybe he wants to do things a bit more different. But we are going to see. And as for Teach, man, I'm going to apologize again. Sorry to Teach. I apologize to Teach, and I invest more of my stocks into Teach than into Luffy. I will say this. I think this was always the end of the road for the Rocks Pirates. Think about it. Wang Zi didn't even come to God Valley, and everyone wanted treasure to find to fund their own crews. Yeah, dog. Everybody had their own dreams. That's the hardest thing. Everyone was chasing their own ambitions. And I hope Teach doesn't find himself in a similar situation. You know, I would really hate to see Teach being betrayed. Oh, there is a traitor amongst the D10. And the person who is most likely to be betrayed is Teach. So I really wouldn't like to see Teach. Oh, there is a traitor amongst the D-clan. There is always a traitor amongst the D-clan. Oh my god. Even in Roxy's crew, there was always a rat. This is depressing to think about. But when it comes to the Rock's parents, it's just sad to see how. In fact, let me just say this. For me, the other guys weren't even in part of Roxy's crew. To me, they were just guys. They had to be there at the end of the day. But the core members of the Rocks Pirates, guys, I'm really much disappointed in Shiki. You know, Shiki, I'm not really impressed with Shiki. There is nothing that will bring back Shiki after this. Like get Shiki out of the top 50 or the top 100. Like right now, the Shiki stocks needs to be just closed and do something with Shiki dog. Like I don't want to hear about Shiki anymore. He had an insane devil fruit, whatever. I don't care. He's weak. He wasn't there when it counted the most. But I don't think they betrayed Teach. I think Teach leaves a lot of his crew behind. Like a stronger extra or like Abu stronger exec. Then maybe Teach gains control of the Seraph frames. I'm not sure about that Apple Strong. I'm not sure who you're referring to. But when it comes to Teach, we can't fuck this one up. This is the end of the David line. It's a loose theory, but I'm going with it. Yeah, dog, it's possible. But when it comes to Teach, we cannot fuck this round up. No one is going to continue Teach's win. No. This is the end of the road. You know? So when it comes to Teach, we can't fuck this one up. Like zero fuck ups that can be tolerated when it comes to Blackbeard at this point. Blackbeard needs to own up and do it do it right. I mean the wrestler and Shiri. Oh, so you're like he will leave behind the likes of Shiri, you know? But I feel like the problems root down to the very same problem, because people will be like, Zoro and Mihawk fight is going to happen. No, there is not going to be a Zoro versus Mihawk fight. Maybe, let me say for now, there is no way that Zoro and Mihawk kill each other right now. No ways, because more firepower is better than less firepower. So a lot of battles will get like most mashups we had for the pirate side, because we really expected Shanks and Blackbeard to end up with the body. You know, I also was one of the guys that wanted Shanks to kill Teach, because I couldn't stand the idea of losing Shanks. But now that I know that Shanks has a twin, like Shanks can die, but Teach cannot die. There's two of Shanks and there's one of Teach. Two of Shanks, one of Teach. So if Shanks happens to die in the hands of Teach, like Shamrock needs to shape up some way or form and then do something for his brother's legacy or carry on where his brother left off. Teach, Teach, we cannot fuck this Teach. This is nothing to joke about. When it comes to Teach, we can't mess things up. Even a bit like everything has to go. I don't want to see Teach losing a hand. You know that thing that likes to happen in One Piece, whereby a character loses a arm and then they are no longer who they used to be. No, no. Teach doesn't get to lose even a finger, even a nail. That's how protective of Teach we're going to be in the next upcoming generation. Because I feel like it's fine. We can lose Luffy at the end of the day because we have Shanks. We can lose Shanks because we have Luffy. It's just a something that we can deal with. But who will replace Shanks? Teach. In this world, in this big of a world in One Piece, who is going to fill Teach's roles? I'm operating from a standpoint that it's a race for the One Piece. I think everyone wants the One Piece. That's the key for who reigns as the king after the final war. Who reigns as a king? Okay, but when you say who reigns as a king, we have to eliminate a few guys. I know Hawkeye Mihawk doesn't wanna rule the world. Baggy, not even. I don't think. Okay, I know Baggy would want to go for the seat, but deep down he wouldn't want it himself. Shanks is not the kind of a guy to become the king. So at the end of the day, there are less people who wanna. Baggy wants to find the One Piece, but Baggy doesn't wanna be the king of the world. You know, so there's a very and he needs Mihawk to do so. Yeah, he does need Mihawk. But when it comes to that crew, I don't think they are going to rule the world. No, as much as Crocodile wants to become a ruler in the world or wants to become a very powerful character, in the world of One Piece, still, I don't think the Cross Guild is going to become that kind of a crew. You know, I know that Luffy wouldn't want to become a king. Even if they forced Luffy to become a king, he wouldn't. So they have to suffice with Teach, or it's either we go with the Queen Nefertari Vivi. At this point, when it comes to the King of the World, I think it will be a decision between the two. Will it be Vivi or will it be Teach? Yeah, I also think they don't do it, but I don't. But I think they are in the conversation. Yeah, Cross Guild is certainly in the conversation. Don't get it confused. Cross Guild can even be the ones to find the One Piece. Trust me, because I do sing Nico Robin and Crocodile working together if comes a time like that. But ladies and gentlemen, we have to talk about this. Baggy is getting the poneglyphs, whether you like it or not. And it can be worse when it comes to Luffy, because with Luffy, it might come with all the translations from Nico Robin. Nico Robin might explain a few things to them. So I rather wish that Baggy either meets with Shanks, but we had a Baggy and Shanks meeting. But how will Baggy and Shanks go? But I know that if Shanks were to meet Baggy, he would give him the road poneglyphs and be like, you know what, buddy? The race for the One Piece. Don't get left behind. Here are the poneglyphs. I feel like a situation like that would happen. So that's why I'm feeling it's no longer about a race anymore. It's not even a race. It goes back to the same situation with Roger, whereby only one man in that generation wanted to become the king of the pirates. He wanted to sail all around the world, and it was a crazy man called Roger. You know, there was one man who wanted to become the king of the world. It was Rocks. So in a generation whereby we want the One Piece more than the seed of becoming the world, I wonder why Blackbeard doesn't have Conqueror's Haki. Maybe Teach doesn't think he's free, you know. maybe Teach doesn't think he's free, but I, to me, I really believe that he does have Conqueror's Haki. Teach might end up having Conqueror's Haki. Not even might end up. How do you, okay, but at the end of the day, in a situation like that, it's that. But there are a lot of Luffy's out there and a very few Teach out. But I'm really glad that Rocks didn't just go out like that. Nah, people would be like, Rocks died. Did he though? Yeah. The question you need to have is like, when someone is like, Rocks died in God Valley, did Rocks die? Because, but let's think about every Conqueror's Haki user who had a son. The only other person in a similar situation is Weaver, but I think he'll have Conqueror's Haki. Yeah, Weevil is a very funny situation because Weevil might be more of a clone than be the kid of. Because we know right now that the crew doesn't go together like that, Not everything will go according to plan, But we might end up having Whitebeard with Stussy, and Stussy treating Whitebeard's injuries and all that. We are not sure. We're not sure. But when it comes to Conqueror's Haki, it's either you have it or you don't, But it's not a case of whereby Teach doesn't have Conqueror's Haki. What if it hasn't awakened yet? Because Ace, when Ace was old, we thought that Ace didn't have Conqueror's Haki. Turns out he was born with Conqueror's Haki. You know, it just turns out that Ace was born with Conqueror's Haki. What made Ace's Haki to be dormant? Because he had it. Like imagine the power that Ace could have had with the Mera Mera no Mi and Conqueror's Haki. So people might get or might be born with Conqueror's Haki, but it is certain types of situations and yeah, mostly it's about situations, because when Luffy awakened his Conqueror's Haki, it was and the War of the Best, but it was already leaking, it was already there, like that. Luffy had Conqueror's Haki. Ace, we never knew until the last moment. You know, Yamato always had Conqueror's Haki from the beginning. So I really have to we really have to discuss it more when it comes to the Conqueror's Haki. I also think that's the case. I think Blackbeard will awaken his Conqueror's Haki late because if Blackbeard is really the final villain, I want him to be as strong as possible. Dog, imagine when Imu thinks things cannot get worse than they already are, and then Teach awakens his Conqueror's Haki. In fact, imagine if it's in front of everybody like Luffy did in War of the Bears. And then we get everybody's reaction to Teach's awakening of Conquerors. Three devil fruits, nah, it's not possible. You know, it is not possible that he gets three devil fruits. I'm not sure if it's not possible, but I really think it's unlikely that he will have three devil fruits. It's really unlikely, because this, when we all and all three types of hack is crazy. But I don't think he will be that much of a genius when it comes to hack. I think he might use it instinctively and he might get better with it as he fights. But I think this is where the Gap and Davy and Teach situation is going to be more interesting. Because right now Gap is with Teach. Because some of the information that is being shown in this flashback, it doesn't sound like it's from Loki. I might be crazy or anything like that, but this is no longer Luke's side of the story. Nah, dog. This has to be Gab, because even in the final moments of this flashback, we end up with Gab. So I feel like this flashback was a combination from three perspectives, not even three, but from four points of views. One, it was from Kuma. One, it was just finishing up Kuma's role in Godville. Number two, it was with who is this? Dragon. Dragon had one of the most important settings in Godville. I mean, he has the strongest paramecia and one of the strongest Lugia fruits. Why doesn't he complete the set with a mythical Zoan fruit? Okay, I do understand that Blackbeard might be suitable with another devil fruit, but if there's another devil fruit out there, give it to Katakuri. If there is a devil fruit out there, it belongs to Katakuri. Okay, Katakuri already ate a devil fruit, but I really hope that even if there's a dead devil fruit, it has to belong to Loki if it is a powerful devil fruit. Because if Luffy ate the legendary fruit of Elbaf, then it's a different story. We have to agree on that. But if there is another devil fruit, can it please be passed to someone else? Can we give it to a Tantara? Can we give it to another giant? Because right now I feel like Teach is scared, guys. I'm not sure if you guys understand that. Teach is like, imagine Whitebeard. Imagine Whitebeard right now. And remember that Teach has the exact same devil fruit. You know? I think we still need to see the mistake that Imu was talking about when Imu arrived and got on Elbaf. Then I think we cut back to Elbaf. But can't we save some for the meeting of Teach and Loki? You know, like we don't need to cover everything as of yet. Like we got a lot of lore, dog. Like a lot of lore is covered, because we even pieced together, because people might be like, God Valley is an island that got destroyed, but I think we need to go back to Sengoku's weight. God Valley is still there. It does exist. Why? God Valley holds important minerals. So there are things we should leave like uncovered for now. Like how Shanks got that sake from his island. God Valley is still there, maybe. So but when it comes to Elbow, like, okay, which one is more terrifying? Is it Ganko or is it Saint Setson? Who do you find more scary? Because personally, I feel like Ganko is way too scary than Saint Setson. You know, I feel like with Ganko, Imu can do everything that he could do with his body. So I feel like the Ganko and Imu situation is very much more terrifying than what we had in God Valley. It was nothing close, because even though Imu was there in God Valley, we didn't see the grimoire. We didn't see Imu in full power. So I feel like Ganko Imu is way more scary. And if we cannot save Ganko, can someone please kill Ganko in this chapter or in this upcoming arc? Can someone deal with Ganko? Because I feel like the biggest problem is Ganko. We must still find out whether Loki really ate a mythical Zoan fruit or not. What Shanks and Gaban did after they found Harold dead. Dog, you know, if we get into that, then I feel like the story would be just complete. You know, we won't be able to theorize anymore, because Shanks, dog, Shanks, Shanks. Shanks, like I've had enough of Shanks and Teach now. You know, it's insane because I didn't do a review of the previous chapter, which is 1163. But Shanks, dog. Shanks had observation haki as a infant. Shanks saw the treasure box and was like, you know what? I foresee safety in that treasure box. I foresee the life my mother would have wanted me to live in that treasure box. Insane. Now the fact that Imu can take over any Gorosei or Holy Knight is scary though. Dog, dog. Like, but I feel like Ganko is way above our pay grade. I feel like Ganko is not normal. The situation with Ganko is not. Hey, Yabana, Kore Ganko can give me sleepless nights. You know, because Imu just looks so pure when it comes to Ganko. You know, when Imu was in Saint Satan, you were like, yeah, King of the Reds for sure. But if we go back to Elbaf, I'm telling you, gentlemen, like when we go back to Elbaf, we're going to see a very scary side of Imu. That is because even though Imu was in God Valley, it didn't feel like it was his full power, or he didn't show more than he needed to at that time. You know, we didn't see the grimoire. You know, but at this point, there's nothing to hide with him. But if Saint Satan didn't have the grimoire, I feel like he was not the perfect vessel. You know, Imu could do whatever she likes, he or she likes, over Saint Satan's body. But Ganko, oh my god, oh my days. You know, so Ganko is way too scary, and something needs to be done with Ganko. And this chapter, not even this chapter, in this arc, you know, at least we know that now Saint Satan is gone. I think there's something more behind Shanks fighting Loki rather than just stopping Loki for the hell of it. Why did Shanks stop Loki? What was Loki going to do? Remember, Shanks became a Yonko after fighting Loki 6 years ago. It was the dream. You know, this is very important that Shanks was like, you know what? You are going to be chained up and sent to Elbaf. Only a crazy fella can set you free. You know? Only a crazy fella can set Loki free. Somehow it happens to be Luffy. You know, so Shanks knows way more than we expect of him. You know, I feel like Shanks knows about the battle, not even knows. I'm sure of it. You know, Shanks knows that the current world government needs to fall because he has seen it with his own eyes. Shanks was at Marijoy's for heaven's sake, you know. So if there is anyone who knows that the world government needs to go down, it's Shanks. You know, but if anyone needs to know about the events of God Valley, Shanks again. You know, because maybe the pirates might not know about God Valley. But what if the incident of God Valley is all you can learn about when it comes to being a holy knight? You know, maybe you cannot become a holy knight without being reminded of the events of God Valley. You can't be weak. You need to be strong to stand up against those kind of threats. You know, so for Ganko, we need to talk to Brooke. Brooke knows too much and needs to start talking now, dog. Brooke can save that because who is dealing with that shit? You know, like who the fuck is dealing with him right now? You know, like we had five of the best. We had, for fuck's sake, we had the top five, the Jets. The top five. You know, we had Gab, we had Roger, we had Kyle, we had Lin Lin, we had Rocks. They couldn't lay a single scratch. a scratch on him. No one could. No one could. You know. So now it's back. I feel like this flashback was just to show us how scary Emo is. What do you guys think? You know, this was just to show us how scary Emo was. Because now I feel like everything that happened before that is just insignificant, we just could do without. It was fine. It was just fine. Until, of course, until God, because in God Valley we see first rocks put down the Holy Knights, and we're like, those guys are scams. Nah, don't tell us about Holy Knights. What are Holy Knights at this point? We can't even handle them at this point. And then we see the final boss. Oh my god. Guys, we saw the final boss. I'm not sure if that's clear. The final boss. Is it a Blue Lock stream? No, not today. Today it's just a One Piece stream. It's just a crazy stream for One Piece. But no, like the most insane things didn't happen in this chapter. That's the most interesting part. That the previous chapter was the most important than this one. Because everything that happened in this chapter was just, oh, the Rock story cannot end. Guys, somehow Rocks used the voice of all things. Like when I saw it at first, I was like, what? Okay, what? Rocks used the voice of all things to talk to Gab and Roger. You know, even Emo was surprised that no man. Rock's dizzy bag is under my spell or is under my control, but still, man. I think it supports my theory that Zoro is getting Domi Reversit. I'm starting to believe it. Dog, who else cannot pick Domi Reversit right now? Hmm? Tell me. Like, thank you for the likes, boys. Who the fuck doesn't get a Domi Reversit? Like, Domi Reversit for everybody as far as I'm concerned. As like, let's just lose Luffy's side and see if Teach can win this war. Because what the hell could stop Imu now? Like I was telling you guys, like you guys are like, nah, Elbaf is nothing to do with anything. Elbaf is calm. Dog, Imu is in Elbaf. You know, who now thinks that Elbaf is no big deal? Everyone is scared to go back to Elbaf now. Nobody wants to go back. It's tragic because Rox died thinking he killed his wife and child. No, the most crazy thing, I'm sure that he knows that he didn't kill them, you know. Rox knows that some way, somehow they made it out there. He knows, because I've but dog, it was crazy to see him throw that final blow, you know. Because I was like, Rox, with all your power, you couldn't even restrict yourself. Like Rox, you couldn't even hold back. Like at this point, I feel like Imu is the final boss. Imu is the final boss. Wena, Kore, uyibona intwela. Did you see that? Oh, our feet. You know, even Rox himself was shocked. Everyone was shocked. I'm still shocked even now. The worst thing is that right now we are dealing with the past. Remember, he was crying when he asked Gab and Roger to kill him. It had to be because he thought he killed Ares and Teach. Me, I just think that it was the thought of just raising his blade against his son. It was just the thought of it, He was like, you know what? I've lost it. You know, I feel like that was the point of defeat for him. I feel like Ross at that point was like, you know what? I'm no longer myself. And it is really hurting for him as a D, because D members are very passionate about their dreams. First, do you think he saw Kuma? Yeah, he did. He did see Kuma. Like, Kuma was really important, because Rox was still there, dog. Even though Imo was controlling Rox to some degree, Rox was still there, So, and I really have to say, like, W to Kuma. Kuma was able to send away Teach and Aris in that point, and then teleport himself out of danger. So Kuma was like tap tap tap, and I'm out. So Kuma dog, like Kuma did a good job. Yeah, I think he saw Kuma. He did see Kuma. That's why, like, after that, there was no reaction, especially from Emu. Emu was just confused as to what happened. But Rox felt it and he knew that they made it out of the island. All I can do now is die. Because I feel like Rox was crying because he feared being Emu's soldier. I feel like the most terrifying thing for Rox at that situation was doing Emu's bidding. Because even Emu herself said it, her or himself was like, now Mu has found the strongest soldier out there. So I really think that Rock's crying dog, it really hit differently. It really hit differently, But it was a way for Roger and Cap to bounce back after the weeks and weeks of slander. I hear what you're saying. You know, I feel like for Rocks, like the worst situation was doing Emo's bidding. That's the worst situation. Like even the orders that he got, like go and wipe Davis' dream, like go and destroy Davis' dream. You know, I would cry too, like if I had to go against myself that much. Like kill me already, dog. Like let me just die. But Rox was just the shell of himself after that. He was no longer the same man he was. No, he's you know quite impactful, I have to say. And I think from here on out, we are all fine, ladies and gentlemen. I think it is a wrap from the flashbacks. I've had enough of the flashback. Like, there's a serious threat. Listen, next chapter, the Roger disrespecters must come outside. I have something for them. Nah, dog. Let's let's let bygones be bygones. We understand that we betrayed Rocks. No, we not. It didn't. We betrayed Roger because of Rocks, but we had to, man. It was just poetic. It was poetic. So the Roger disrespect, even Gab too, dog. Gap made a very serious bounce back because as much as I was really angry at these two guys, especially Roger and Gap, because people died and got failed at the end of the day. I was really pissed, I have to say. But Kuma saved me from my anger. Kuma can save anyone from anything, So with Kuma there, I was able to, what? Maybe we didn't need pirates after all. Kuma was there, So now I understand more about what was happening in Godvalley because you had people vanishing and for random reasons. Some were dying, some were being sent away from Kuma, but you know, it was really tough. Godvalley was a very tough. I'm saying it was because it's in the past year. So when it comes to God Valley, the most important thing right now. I'm not sure if I have to say this, but Captain Jones, you know, Captain Jones was taken out by a booger, and that was quite disappointing. But in a way, I feel like it's a gag, because we've seen more people being attacked with a booger than we might like. So I feel like that attack was more of a gag and more of a, you know, that's what you get from Captain Jones. But the thing we're waiting for is Jones going to get the treasure. Now they calling the man who opened the story fraud guy. all, all that for being a young man. I told people after God Valley that when Roger locks in, remember, without Roger, the One Piece is unreachable. Yeah, dog. Like, and you've been saying for a minute, you've been saying it for a minute that, when Roger bounces back, you guys won't believe it. And now we can't believe it. Now you're like, oh, now we are in for the ride. But it's too late, man. It's a little bit too late. You know, you helped Rocks a bit too late. Even though it happened, it was late. It was on at the end of the day. But interesting. I have said that, like, we apologize to you already, dog. I know I've been one of those guys that fell out of line for a moment. I started doubting Gab, I started doubting Roger. But let's end the flashback before these guys look cool. Even Gab, do you know what, what they were calling Gab? They were calling him the warrior of oppression. Oh, I feel like the past month you couldn't bear the past month. But like everything is fixed now, dog. Everything is okay. You can't judge us from judging them, from their past experiences. But I feel like Godville has taken a wholesome turn of events, because in the last chapter we saw them stand side by side. Ladies and gentlemen, we saw we saw Roger, Rox, and Gab fighting together. We saw them fighting together before we saw them fighting against each other. Nah, we got that before GTA 6, by the way. We got Roger, Rox, and Gap versus Emo before GTA 6. I know it won't be as spectacular as it is, but so I'm in comment section cooking these guys. Oh, dog, like it seemed like it had a very, very a very tough past. But now it all makes sense. Like you never doubted them for a moment, did you? Like this guy didn't have a single amount of doubts for them. Like this guy's just breathe in, and then it was just Conqueror's hacky blasts. It was just breathe in and lightning all over the place. So even Emo is shocked. Emo's like Davy, and I feel like it's just satisfying when Emo refers to Rocks as Davy. It's just satisfying. So Jones, Joy Boy. I mean, me, I feel like this chapter, it's either it confirms our theories, or it just disapproves them. Because in this chapter, Rox asked Emu if he's more scared of Joy Boy or more scared of Emu. Not Emu, but I think next chapter Roger gets that Shanks, Joy Boy, Haki Bloom. It answers why Kaido was glazing Roger so much. Now, the craziest part is that these guys standing in front of rocks have no devil fruits. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I am sure that rocks hadn't eaten a single fruit. None. Roger didn't eat a fruit. No. You know, rocks, man. Rocks didn't eat a fruit. But I think this is on a different level, dog. Like, this is different. Amount of concrete. Dog, these guys just breathe in, and then it was the rest is history. It was, and then everybody was knocked out. Everybody was knocked out, So I feel like when it comes to hockey, now it's the time it transcends everything because I feel like if they can put down, oh my god, no ways, no ways, no, because I don't see Imu going away from this island in any shape or form. To Gap and Roger drive Imu away from the island. Like to Gap and Imu attack, not Imu, to Gap and Roger attack Imu after rocks. Because I feel like it won't be easy taking down rocks. Firstly, it won't be easy. But 2v1 against him, I think that's more more of an advantage for them. But if they can kill him right here, we might have the solution to regeneration, ladies and gentlemen. If these guys can kill rocks in the upcoming chapters or two, we have the solution. We have the solution to the regeneration. I think Imo is scared of the truth, mainly about Davy Jones, and was scared of fighting Joy Boy. Not that he was scared of fighting Davy, but I think Imo took the throne by force. Mm. But like we need to let this rest. I feel like right now we don't have to intertwine Davy Jones and Joy Boy, even though it is interesting, because what do these characters have in common? J. Both characters have names or nicknames that start with J. Jones, Joy Boy. What else? King. They both wanted to become king. Okay, maybe not both wanted to become king, but what if people wanted David Jones to become the king and then Jones was like, nah, I don't want to be king. Like, I don't want to be king. Lily, you can become the queen. What if that was the type of situation? Because I feel like this chapter just certifies that people don't understand it at the end of the day. Maybe even Rocks himself doesn't understand Joy Boy and Davy Jones as to where they come from. But if it is confirmed that they are two different people, I'm in for it. I'm really, because I feel like we've covered enough of Joy Boy. Like enough of Joy Boy. Enough of Joy Boy, enough of Nika, enough of Luffy for now. Okay, not for now, not for now. Like let's not cut our Elbaf arc. No, we want our Elbaf arc, but we need to see Teach right now because it's no longer. I think this is what we've been waiting for this whole time. Oda was waiting for us to know the truth. Because remember, Davy was the previous king of the world. And see how Imo reacted when Rock said it. So I think Imo stole that role. But what if he didn't want to become a king? What if David D. Jones didn't want to to be the king of the world. You know, because at sometimes you might be the rightful king, but if you don't want to, then what do people do in that situation? Because I feel like Imo might have felt like not even rocks, but what if Imo feels like not even rocks, but Davy didn't deserve to become the king of the world just because he didn't want to rule? You know, what if Davy Jones prioritized freedom more than the throne? What if he was like, nah, I don't want all those burdens. I don't want everything that comes with that throne. I just want to be free. I just want to go out for an adventure. What the heck? Where's the sense of adventure, you guys? If that's the situation, then how does that change or shape the story of One Piece? Because like like, ladies and gentlemen, these two guys are the same people. Now I'm just saying it. But I think the conflict with Joy Boy might have been different. You know, but every time they speak of Davy Jones, dog, it feels like they are exposing Joy Boy. Because for it to get more confusing, like Rox himself had to say it that the dream will be fulfilled at the end of the day. Okay, what dream? Because that dream to me sounds like it's the very same dream that Joy Boy had. You know, maybe it's not the dream of ruling the world, but the dream of getting rid of Mu. The dream of getting rid of the world government. What if that's the dream that's being passed over generations to generations? What fucking dream are we after right now? Like, what's the difference between the dream that Teach is chasing and the one that Luffy is chasing? What is the difference? That's the question. What was the promise? Because a lot of promises were made. A lot of promises, and now we are getting dragged into it. A lot of promises were made, and it sounds like the same promise, dog. Like, it's really scary, like hearing it from both sides, because Lily was like, I couldn't make him king. I'm not sure if Lily said those words to be exact, but I think Zunisha said it that, sorry, Joy Boy, I couldn't make you king. You know, even the Robonosuke said the same thing. Sorry, Joy Boy, I couldn't make you king. What fucking king? You know, what king? Because I feel like this promise thing is one giant misconception that is just separating the decline for now. But when these guys understand that the goals are intertwined and they're aligned, because look at this. Roger wanted to go for an interesting adventure. You know, Roger was like, what? I'm going to the whole inherited worlds theme is why I think we're getting Luffy and Blackbeard versus Emo in Elbaf, right? Oh my god. In Elbaf. Oh my god. Like, imagine Luffy is down for the count, you know, when you think things couldn't get worse in Elbaf, and then you hear the ha 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 ha. I really want Teach to come now, dog. Now. Like, now. And he can't be late, dog. You know, he needs to be a panel early. A panel early whereby they show his feet on the island, and then the next panel he's already jumping into action. But Blackbeard needs to arrive in Elbaf right now. I can't wait for another arc. Let me just say, like, I won't wait for another 2 years for Blackbeard to make a move. Now, no, before the final fight of the story, I still think Teach is going to get Pluton in one. But what if all of this happens after we talk things through? Please, can you just, because I feel like if things go forward with Luffy and Teach not meeting an Elbaf, I feel like the story is still going to go to shit, because you have Teach going after the Revolutionary Army, you know, you have Shanks going after Teach, you know, you have people thinking maybe Luffy and Teach is going to happen, the revenge for Ace, but I feel like Luffy already expressed all of his pain against Blackbeard when he was in Impel Down, but for Luffy to harbor that kind of hate now, that would be a weakness to him. If Luffy, the pirate he is now, still holds a grudge about Ace, I feel like that would be a very big weakness for him. But we will see, because even if it happens, these guys were always best friends, they clicked. So Teach getting ancient weapons, I feel like, can he please get Loki first? Like Loki first before ancient weapons. Because I would like to see Loki interaction with Shirahoshi. Because I feel like Loki would be the one to tell Shirahoshi that, what, you are so weak, babes. You need to fight, because I feel like we need someone to bring Shirahoshi out of the comfort zone. Shirahoshi can't go out there and go for the One Piece too, dog. Now, I understand that maybe Shirahoshi might be the only character capable. Now we have Jimbe. We have a fishman, which is Jimbe, So if we need someone to go down there and make sure to find the ancient kingdom, Jimbe will do it. But Shirahoshi, I feel like Shirahoshi needs to move outside of Luffy. Nah, there is absolutely no talking between Teach and Luffy. I also think with the parallels of Teach and Shanks being rescued from God Valley, I think Teach kills Shanks. But Teach kills Shanks in what situation? Because I do feel like all of these battles with Shanks's battles were really fun. Because let's dial back for a bit. There are there are three legendary fights of Shanks that we know of. After they can't be talking between Luffy and Teach. Okay, so listen to this now. There were three fights of Shanks that we know of. One fight was just a fight from Shanks. You know, this was just a fight, just a basic fight from Shanks, which was Shanks versus Mihawk. And then we have Shanks versus Luffy and Shanks versus Teach. You tell me, and he got a scar from. Okay, maybe it's not the wisest situation to differentiate them because these fights were really insane for Shanks. Okay, Shanks versus Mihawk. I'm not sure if Shanks got his scar from that, but Shanks needed the strength of all giants against Loki. You know. And the funny thing is that Shanks is the one who wants smoke with Blackbeard and is the one who is gonna end up being killed. So I feel like it's not. I feel like even Shanks didn't understand the situation back then, because at the end of the day, Shanks was a kid that was given an adult's role. Like at some point, you need to understand that Shanks might be shown as a perfect character, but Shanks is not perfect. But if you look at things, Shanks was just trying to preserve everything. Why? Shanks went to one because he thought Teach was going to strike one. Why? He knew that Wano was important. Shanks already knew that Wano is important and Teach going to Wano would be very bad. And it's likely to happen. But what about now that the time has come? You know, what about now that the time has come? What about now that Shanks is going for the One Piece? Is there anything that is going to distract Shanks from his dream? I don't think so. I don't think even Teach is worth it anymore. Because now Nika is there, I feel like enough waiting for Shanks. I feel like Shanks can now do whatever he wants. This is the time he gets to be the man he wants to be. But when it comes to Shanks and Teach, that fight is not happening. That fight is not happening. Like the most concerning fight has to be Shanks versus Shamrock for me. Because I wouldn't want anyone else to go against Shamrock. That's a bit scary. I feel like you are going to a disadvantaged fight. Only his brother can handle him. So anyone else needs to stay away from Shamrock. Even Dragon himself. I feel like Dragon is not safe too from this guy Shamrock. So it is fun while it all lasted, but I don't think that these fights are going to happen anymore. I see Shanks as the balance of the world. Nobody acts without Shanks doing anything unknowing, but also Shanks wants the One Piece. This final war and its fight is very complicated if you think about it. About the fights we have to get, yeah, they are very complicated, because Shanks is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Shanks is stuck between a rock and hard place because he might want the One Piece, but you need to deal with your family, dog. At the end of the day, it's also Shanks's job to clean up, because the world government can't continue their reign. So that's why I'm saying things are going to change soon. Things are going to change very soon, because all of these fights happening, we need to agree about something at some point. Because imagine if Dragon and Blackbeard were to fight right now. At first it was like, why did the Revolutionary Army run away from Teach? But you understand that you cannot lose anything from both sides. You can't. You just can't lose anything. You just can't lose anything. So Elbaf is going to turn to a very, very interesting arc. Elbaf is going to be jam packed with action, and I'm here for it. I don't wanna lie. And no break next week. What? But sad news for the anime, we are going seasonal. I heard that we're going to get a maximum of 20 something episodes next year covering the Elbaf arc, which is sad, I have to say. Sad, sad. But there will be no longer a weekly section of One Piece. As to why, not sure. But now, I don't think there's anything that's left in One Piece except the return of Foxy. You know, guys, I know it will happen. The greatest event to ever happen. Because it starts with everyone wanting the One Piece. Then you think about the groups directly in conflict. But first, I think we need to see some source for the Gorosei and Holy Knights to make the war interesting. Because even though we feel like this is the most interesting situation. that the Holy Knights were focused on protecting the celestial dragons. They were like, okay, Holy Knights, fall back for now. Let's just make sure that the nobles don't get hurt. What would the situation be like if the Holy Knights were like, Holy Knights, assemble, let's go fight them? You know, how would the situation go? But not very best against Rocks himself, but I feel like the Holy Knights needs to show us a lot. The Holy Knights have a lot to show, especially right now that Marijuana is burning. I'm not sure if we'll get the time to visit Marijuana. I'm not sure, but this is already things are way too interesting for me. Me, if I were to speak for myself, I will say I'm already entertained. Because Oda has covered everything perfectly, dog. Perfectly. The anime had to go seasonal because the weekly thing is not good. Yeah, it's not good. It's really not good. I remember I was also watching One Piece like in the recent episodes, and I was like, hmm, because it's One Piece, you know. Because you remember we had that argument that one has to go, one has to go. We cannot enjoy our manga and then we go to anime and then we get disappointed because it's not the same, dog. Like, we don't care about animation at this point because we are used to Oda's drawings, dog. I feel like that's the hardest thing for the anime. The hardest thing for the anime, it's not about the animation, it's about what do you do with this drawing. Because I feel like we underestimate the growth that Ichiro Oda is showing, like from the recent, like from Egghead Island. Look at how Elbaf is going. The pacing is perfect. I understand people had a problem with One Piece and they were like, the pacing is just way too bad and all that. But now things are way too good. For the manga, let me be specific, but the anime is really tough, because it's not easy animating Gear 5 Luffy. What did you think about Sanji kicking versus Nesture in the anime? Sanji fans were crashing out because Sanji didn't get impact frames like Zoro. I feel like that was important for Sanji not to get impact frames at that point, because people just people need to understand that Sanji is not going to be getting impact frames like Zoro every time because Sanji is just Oda's ideal. How can I put this? But Sanji is just an ideal man. Like to Oda, Loki is just a not even Loki, but Sanji is just an ideal man. So Sanji is an ideal. So it will be really hard dealing with Sanji, but I did expect it to come out like that, because that punch wasn't something major, but the fact that Sanji has the balls to do something like that, the balls, the audacity. How can you want top tiers animation for a single unimportant moment? Dog, it's just insane. You can't ask for everything, especially from Sanji. And I feel like if things are more simple for Sanji, it becomes more simple for him as a character and for the story. Because you have to understand that Sanji gets impact frames when he needs to. Not like spamming impact frames, nah. But with the Zoro, okay, but let me just say this, but that Sanji and Noshiro thingy, it was insignificant compared to Noshiro and Zoro, because they had to build up a rivalry at that point. They had to create some sort of like people needed to see that moment and want more because there's a rivalry formed between these two guys having the same swords. So it's not really important that Sanji got impact frames, but this is the worst arc for Sanji. We have to say that Elbaf, not even Elbaf, but Egghead Island is the worst. Oh, oh, okay. Now it makes sense. Because for Sanji to stand out most of the time, it's mostly because of his fighting, or maybe he does something smart, that we didn't expect. But how did Sanji stand a chance of outsmarting Vegapunk? You know, this arc, this egghead arc wasn't that much for Zoro because not even for Zoro, but for Sanji, because in a situation whereby he needs to think, a lot of thinking was being done for him at this part. They want to complain about Toei adding content to Zoro versus Lucci as if they weren't supposed to because of how important that chapter was. Yeah, it is very important. People need to understand that it was very important for that Zoro and Rob Lucci fight because it's going to happen. Everything that happened with Zoro was unsolved. So this is why I like trolling Sunny fans because they think this guy is Superman or more important than he really is. But I feel like in this arc, Sanji had the most development. You know, Sanji had the most development because, like, I see that Zoro might have fought, because Zoro fought against Rob Lucci, Zoro fought against Saint Nostro, but I'm like, okay, for what? Because at the end of the day, all he did was just strengthen his techniques, but he didn't understand his conqueror's haki, so everything that they're arguing about, it was just baseless, it was just Zoro being Zoro. It's just another day of being Zoro. But when it comes to Sanji, dog, like in that situation, Sanji couldn't deal with Kizaru, you know. Kizaru was too fast. Think about it, you know. He couldn't solve anything like in a he couldn't use his super brain, because we know that when it comes to the men in the Straw Hat Cruise, Sanji is up there, So how do you put Sanji's brains to use if you have all the Vegapunks sacrificing themselves? All of them. Like, all of the Vegapunks were like doing some shit that was 1000 IQ. So there was nothing that Sanji was doing that could stand out in that chapter or in that arc to be specific. Because Sanji stands out with cooking when it comes to his brains, when it comes to fighting, but you cannot outperform who is this? Sanji cannot fight better than Luffy. Sanji cannot outperform Kizaru when it comes to fights. Okay, maybe for now, but it's not possible. I have to tip W stream. Maichi, when you have stable internet, you must start a Discord so we can chop it up properly. No stress, boys. No stress. Let me get into some reaction videos too. And then maybe I'm gonna do something about the Discord because I have the Discord already. So for Sanji, it is quite hard, I have to say. Quite hard. But W streams. Okay, I understand W streams.